Welcome, everyone. Today is our second installment of the APPF podcast, where we are very excited to meet with Farhana Khan, who is a well-established audiologist in Pietermaritzburg, so a colleague of mine here on the KZN coast. And we are very excited to chat to Farhana because she has a lot of experience when it comes to speech therapy as well as audiology. So she comes with two hats that she's wearing and a third hat as being one of the directors of APPF. So she has been a colleague of mine for a very long time. She was originally at the university doing lecturing of students and then embarked into independent private practice a number of years ago, and has a very well-established clinical diagnostic practice where she works with a lot of ENTs in the Pietermaritzburg area, as well as with voice therapy and neuro for speech therapy. So I'm very excited to introduce Farhana today. And over to you, Farhana. Tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you, Cara. Sure, that makes me sound, well, I am old, makes me sound very old. Yeah, so as rightfully so, I'm qualified as an audiologist now for more than 30 years. So when I qualified, it was still the dual qualification, hence me being both an audiologist and a speech language therapist. But curiously, my first job was with, you guys probably know her, Ishara Ramkisson, or she's Prof. Ramkisson now, and she's now working at Gallaudet University in Washington. So the two of us were classmates, got our first job opportunity at Barra, and Michelle Ash, who's out is it Marisma in George, was the head of department of Barra at the time. And so she had been the only sole surviving person from the previous year. And there were 7 or 8 of us that were all new. And we were, Ishara and I were like, a little bit out of our depth. You come out of university, you're not the most confident, especially with the dual qualification, because you just don't feel you have enough clinical exposure. And we really thought that we had landed with our bums in the butter, because none of all the other graduates all the other individuals that got the job were Wits graduates, hated audiology. And Ishara and I were like, okay, because it was like, who wants to do what? Because we were all new. So we were like, okay, we'll run with audio. So we both ran the audio department at Barra for the time that I was there, because both of us just tended to have affinity to audio. Sebrant this may be so before your time, but Sebrant, we used to do ear mold impressions without a syringe. We used to do it manually. You just pack this in the ear and hope that it would turn out fine. So and I mean, I fitted many body-worn hearing aid. I could tell you a lot about the body-worn receivers and why you would choose an X or a Y cord. So I figured it out. And then potentiometers, and you never go without your little screwdrivers. So for me, hearing aids has come such a long way. I mean, I should really write up something. I could write something up because I just marvel. I always tell my patients, it's absolutely the right time to be wearing hearing aids. It's the best time to be wearing hearing aids. But what hearing aids can do, I mean, I've come through that whole analog journey right up to digital. So yeah, don't know if I've answered your question. And then speech therapy is definitely, so audio has always been my first love. And yeah, I enjoy teaching and I miss it. I taught for 11 years at UKZN, and then for the last 3 years that I was there, had the privilege of being the head of department. I met Cara, when she came to UCT graduate, came to UKZN to do her master's, and current head of department Nevi was your supervisor, Cara. That's when we first met. And yeah, I remember this very bohemian young lady who had all of that passion, and it hasn't lasted though. Yeah, so I lectured for 11 years in audio. I missed teaching a lot, but it was when I left, I had to leave. It wasn't a happy place for me anymore. It became a very difficult environment. Teaching isn't easy anymore. And the area that I lectured in was, so I designed, we were the first university to go with the split degree, the individual qualifications. And then I was instrumental in designing what was referred to as rehabilitation technology, which was a course in hearing aids, assistive technology, cochlear implants, which I lectured for all the time that I was there. And then I designed the clinic. I was very proud of the way our clinic ran. Lauren was here to meet me this morning. She was one of my students, Glossop from Phonak. And hearing aids, audio is, as I said, has always been my first love. And then when I quit in 2007, I just about had it with university and wanted something different. So I moved to the UAE, worked at the hospital in Abu Dhabi, and I worked as a speech therapist for 3 years we're doing very little audio. I was very good friends with the ENTs. They would call me up if they had a difficult patient. The audiology is not well regarded in the Middle East as speech therapy is. And the audiologists all came from India, and they're not because they came from India, but not the qualification was the same as ours. And curiously, when I decided to leave, they had wrote me in to try to start a cochlear implant program at the Sheikh Khalifa Medical City. But I only worked in speech therapy, but also not all speech therapy. So I specialize in dysphagia and adult neuro and dysphagia across the spectrums. I then returned to South Africa. I was unemployed, and then Shell from Signia snapped me up to help out. And that's where Signia, I would say, got a footprint in KZN. I worked with them for a year and then got the opportunity to start on my own practice. So that's my story.
Wow, Farhana, that is a mouthful and really interesting. I just want to say, I still remember when I finished varsity that we were also tuning hearing aids with screwdrivers, louder, softer, and high frequencies and low frequencies. Farhana, so there's something interesting there in the UAE, the scope of audiology there. What is it like compared to South Africa? So what's your limitations?
So the hospital that I was at had an audio department. The audiologists, and I think that's why I'm so proud of being an independent audiologist, because you don't have the autonomy. So basically, they work as technicians. So the ENTs. So because I did dysphagia and I worked with trachea patients, I knew the ENTs very well. So we would cross different parts of the ENTs, but I knew the ENTs, and there were a couple of guys from South Africa in part of the ENT program. But I used to often laugh and say I'd never be able to work as an audiologist, because they would literally send the patient to the audio and say, Tim, no reflexes, only pure tone air conduction. So they would tell what to do. There was never the full diagnostic test battery. I did a bit of audio because I worked with a whole team of speech therapists, and we had a rehab center attached to the hospital called ADRC, Abu Dhabi Rehab Center. And there were kiddies there that had hearing aids. So I would do, every now and then, do checks of their hearing aids, do basic audios, do like functional gain measures to see the hearing aids were okay. But you don't get self-standing independent practices like we have the opportunity to have in South Africa, in the UAE. So you're either based at a hospital or you're based at a retail outlet like we're experiencing now. So, like the Audifons and those kind of, like Phonak was quite big. Specsavers was trying to get into UAE, and weirdly they approached myself and Carlos Merchant-Pillay. They approached the two of us to try and get their foot in to start a whole Specsaver franchise for audio in the UAE, because they were already there for the optical side. But yeah, you don't have the autonomy. You just don't have the kind of clout that we have. And I think I'm quite proud of the fact that I don't know what everything that an ENT does, and I appreciate that not all, but a lot of our ENTs respect what we do, and especially with hearing aid technology, So I think that kind of, and then you don't do hearing aid fittings in a hospital unless you are in one of the major hospitals. So the hospital that I was at, which was a huge hospital, didn't. We had to refer patients to the Rashid Hospital in Dubai, but they had a very good team of audiologists in Dubai, and where they would do electrophirs, etc. But hearing aids minimally, weirdly, you refer the patient then to one of these practices, which was the retail practice franchises for a hearing aid. So I was actually quite, because while I was there, I was playing around with the idea, should I get into audio? Let's see what the audio prospects are long term. Would I like to stay on in the country? because I was missing audio too much, and I couldn't see myself staying there indefinitely without having exposure to audio. And then, I realized that I wouldn't have the same kind of autonomy and clout as an independent audiologist there that I have the liberty of having here in South Africa.
Farhana, you've got such a lot of history behind you, and I have, and I'm sure as you do have, many patients that come in and say, well, why are hearing aids so big? And after having heard, you've worked with from body worn hearing aids and up until now, and you've seen the growth of hearing aids and the changes that have been implemented and the technology that is now available to our patients with hearing technology. What would you say to someone that says, why are hearing aids so big and why are hearing aids so expensive?
Okay, so I have to admit I'm not a very good business person. So when it comes to the price side, about why hearing aids are so expensive, I often, in terms of, let me go back to size. So in terms of size, I have obviously then the experience of telling patients, I used to fit patients with things that look like big yellow bananas on their ears. So this is definitely a lot smaller than compared to what it was. Obviously, I'm a big fan of RICs, and my practice, I think, is 99% RICs. So, the RICs are definitely a lot slimmer compared to your BTEs, where I do show them the difference in size. But, I always draw the analogy of glasses. And when they ask about the size and the price, I always say, with glasses, you don't have, once your lenses are made, that's it. You can't go back to the optometrist 2 weeks later and say, this is not okay. My prescription is wrong. They're going to have to remake those glasses. You can't tweak it. And that's what you pay for. So it's also a dynamic thing. It's not static. Your lenses are made, that's it. You adjust to them. You've made the decision to go with multifocals. You can't adapt. You may not end up wearing the multifocals because you feel like you're walking funny, and I'm talking from personal experience, but then the optometrist can't do anything about it. And I think what I always tell patients is, in terms of the cost, is that you've got a warranty on this instrument. We select a hearing aid, and I hope everybody does that. That is not only going to be appropriate for your hearing loss as it is. So as your hearing evolves and changes, like I fitted patients with Meniere's who have weird things going on with their hearing. So you can always come back, and that's the reason why you're paying. You're paying for the fact that it's a dynamic thing. I marvel at how you can adjust and fine tune and tweak and change things. Things are going south with the hearing, you change from a dome to a receiver mode, for example, or you don't have to scrap the whole hearing aid and you just maybe change the power of the receiver if need be. If something, I had a patient whose hearing ended up with a very weird kind of virus, and that would happen to him. The cost as well is because these are little working computers on your ears. And I tell them, in my day, hearing aids had movable parts. They don't have that anymore. There's a little chip in the hearing aid, and now we've got a little Bluetooth chip in the hearing aid as well. So think of your hearing aid as the teeny little computer that you're wearing on your ear that's adapting and changing and evolving based on the environment that you move in. And you do this when you've got normal hearing so effortlessly without realizing what a hearing aid can do. And I think when you start to lose that sense, and when you put these little gadgets on your ears, you realize what they're doing to try and make it, to try and capture all of that sound that you're missing out on. So not only speech, but also noise, also sound in the environment, and then also balancing the environment. And that's what your adaptive, microphone technology. Also, being able to give you access to sounds that you didn't hear. So I have many patients of mine are very big bird watchers and stuff. And just a patient I trialed, and she's still sitting with a trial hearing aid. She wants me to order her hearing aid. She can't part with the trial pay. She's got Meniere's and quite hectic, and she's gone through a bad patch where her hearing has just dropped dramatically. And she said she and her husband, they got a farm out in the Underberg area, and she said she and her husband were sitting out, and she commented on this bird, and she said, when is this little thing being in our garden? And he's like, it's always been here. And she's been living on that property, she says, for like maybe over 40, 50 years, and she's had it for the first time. So she so appreciated the hearing aid. So I know I'm digressing, but so that's why you're paying so much for them. There's no comparison because patients will often compare them to glasses. And the size is because there's so much that has to go into them for them to be able to work, for them to be a dynamic little computer that you're basically walking around with.
And what a vast field with, the superiority of that technology. It's so exciting to see what the future is going to hold as well with hearing devices. But that's one part, and Cara had a long list of clinical expertise that you had. But I want to know from you, what is it, you're dual qualified, what is it that makes you tick? What are you excited about, in audiology or speech therapy? But where's your niche where you feel, I'm really passionate about this?
With either field, say, Brent. Of late, the passion has been waning. I sometimes feel, it's good that I'm at maybe the tail end of my career. My financial director always teases me and says that I can go into early retirement. It's so weird because the same patient that I'm talking about, the one with the many years, asked me why audiology. She said, like, what made you become an audiologist or choose audio and speech? And I fell into it by absolute default. I wanted to be a vet, and I got admitted at Honors to Court. And unfortunately, because of our rather unfortunate history in South Africa with apartheid, they thought that I was Jewish. They got my spelling of my surname wrong. So when I called out, and one of the correspondents, so they misspelled it as Khan, which is the right spelling of my surname. So I corrected the spelling and sent the documentation back. You obviously didn't have stuff like this back then. And then I got a phone call from the lady saying, no, that's correct spelling. And I'm like, oh, it's Khan. And then she obviously heard me speaking, and she's like, so your first name is unusual. So I didn't know where she was going. And then she asked outright, are you not white? Not. So I lost my position at Honors to Court because they were not accepting people of color to study veterinary science back in the day. And then I was sitting in a duang, so I got accepted. God knows how they glossed over the idea that I was Indian, because they obviously, somebody missed it. And so, the Jewish version of Khan is Kahan. And then I was read an article in the Fair Lady magazine about an audiologist in Joburg, and the speech therapist and audiologist. And I'm like, you know what? Let me just see if I can apply for this, because I was literally floundering and I wanted to study something in healthcare. And I got accepted for medicine at first, and then I was so disillusioned. I'm like, I'm not leaving home. I'm just going to study close by. And then I just fell into audio. But say, Brand, it's so weird. I don't know what it is. I don't know what keeps me coming back every day and keeps me learning. But it's a weird profession that I still so enjoy. I do more audio now than I do speech. I have a speech therapist working with me who does a lot of the speech. I still enjoy the dysphagia. I still enjoy working with the trachea patient. I love working with laryngectomy patients. So I do the head and neck stuff. So, it's that kind. And I think the parallels between the two is that I like where you can get results quickly. So I love that we can do something and we can immediately get gratification where the patient is enjoying the instrument. And that's why the areas in speech therapy as well that I enjoy are where you can get the patient eating quickly with the laryngectomy, where you can get the voice quickly. So it's that kind, I can't do normal speech therapy, and I wouldn't be able to work in a profession where I have to wait forever to get some kind of results. I think that's what drives me, and that's what I enjoy so much about audio, because it never ceases to amaze me how people are blown away when you can do something about the hearing loss, where they get to experience all the lovely technology and are wowed by the fact that it's streaming to their cell phone. So there's a very generous guy who fitted his laborer. He's a chicken farmer, and this guy works with his chickens. And he's only 28, has sensorineural hearing loss, and the owner of the farm decided to fit him with hearing aids. So I fitted him last week with a set of hearing aids, and he connected to, so he had a Nokia phone, and lo and behold, it managed to pair with his hearing aids, and then we did a phone call. And he just sat there so chuffed with himself that he could not believe that he could hear, because he used to walk around, his friend laughing. It's like he walks around like an old man with his phone on speaker. That's what keeps me interested and passionate about what we do. And I think also, say, Grant, every day is not not the same. Even though you feel sometimes you're getting into a rut, every patient comes with their own stories, and I think that's what keeps me passionate about doing what I'm still doing 30 years on.
Thank you, Farhana. I think the common denominator in all of those things is that you really just like to work with people. I think that I think is the bottom line, is you want to help people and you want to feel that you've made a change in your bubble and with the people around you. And I think that you're doing a fabulous job. And I hope that you continue for many, many years, because we need someone out there in Pietermaritzburg to be a strong representation of independent audiology and how important it is for the public to understand the value of having someone like you keep your doors open and keep offering them the highest standard of audiology and speech therapy that you pride yourself in. So it's fine, I think, not to have a specific area of passion, but also just to want to help and to get that instant gratification, which is not always like personal. It's maybe not always you that you want that instant gratification, but you also understand that the change in the generation and in the current patient database or patient load that we are working with is that people generally want instant gratification, and it's quite possible these days with hearing aids and the new hearing aid technology. It doesn't take 2-3 hours to fit a hearing aid and to do the orientation like we used to, and using our fine tuning and screwdrivers. So we've come a long way, and I think that's what I feel. What I get from you is that you're passionate about helping people, which is amazing, and we need more and more people like you. If you had to tell your 20-year-old self now what you know, what would you tell yourself?
Goodness, get a life. The hard one, hey? I think maybe not so much in terms of my profession. Weirdly, I mean, as I said, I fell into this by default, and I can't see myself being anything else. If I was born a man, I would have probably been an F1 car driver, F1 racing driver, maybe. Joking. It's so weird, but I honestly can't see myself being anything else in terms of profession. What I would tell my 20-year-old self is, I think I wish I had the kind of thick skin that the younger people do. I think I take a lot of things to heart. I think I can't get over things quickly, So, and it's not easy with patients now, regardless of, not necessarily younger patients, older patients as well. It's getting harder. Patients are becoming a lot more difficult. The demands are becoming a lot more, and there's the competition. So they also, I don't know sometimes whether, even though I love working with people, I wonder sometimes whether some people truly value you. And I think, I would just tell my 20-year-old self to just not sweat the small stuff. Whatever comes to you, and just, if it doesn't, it's just not meant to be. But, in terms of my trajectory from when I graduated, I started working at the age of 21. I don't think I would have changed that experience that got me to where I am today. But definitely not be as serious about things and not let things get to you as much. Cara has the right attitude. Can't say it out loud, but you know what I mean, Cara?
Yeah, Farhana, that's really good advice. The benefit of hindsight, hey? Don't sweat the small stuff. I think that's good advice in the changing audiology landscape as well for the younger audiologists coming in. Although, some of the market changes isn't necessarily small stuff, but I think what I hear from that as well is focus on what you want to do and be the best. This sounds like a motivational speech, but be the best that you can be in what you do and focus on that, and don't worry too much about what's going on the peripheral, and just do what you do and be focused on that, and then don't sweat the small stuff. Can you think of what was one of the most challenging things in your career? So looking at, a long career, that's probably really difficult. But if you can think of a moment that's been the most challenging for you in your career and how you got through that.
It was the reason why I left university. And this is, yeah, where in hindsight again, you just have to be true. And I think like without sounding too cheesy and authentic. And I know I always give 100% or if not more. I think, you always want to look back and think, did I do something wrong? And I think I always take responsibility first. Did I mess up? What was the reason things didn't go well? And for me, what was the turning point? I may never have gotten to this point, I said, on being an independent practitioner. I may never have left UKZN. But and it was such a difficult time. I mean, I didn't even blink an eye when I submitted my resignation. I had a student that was very dear to me and unfortunately was failing my course. And it was rehabilitation tech, which was hearing aids, etc. And it was a third-year module. And, if you know about universities, that at third year, everything is modulated. There's an external examiner. There's a whole process. So I can't fail somebody just because I don't like them, because it's going to be marked by an internal modulator. There's an external examiner who's going to corroborate, so why did you give the child, the student, this mark? I think they deserve better, etc. And I was the head of department at the time, and I get a call from the dean saying, there's a meeting that you need to be at. And I got to the dean's office. I'm like, what's going on? I didn't realize there was a meeting planned. Did I miss something? And she said, no, sorry, Farhana, but it's about you. And lo and behold, SRC chair, the student that I failed, and myself, basically the SRC was telling the dean that I should be fired because the student's failing his module. It wasn't a nice time in my life, Safe. It was a very difficult time. I love teaching, and I met lots and lots of my ex-students who thankfully appreciated what I did when I was there. And I was challenged about the results. I was challenged about why he was failing. And when I explained the process, and the SRC president looked like an idiot because he wasn't aware of the fact that I wasn't the only person responsible for the mark that was given. But that for me was a very difficult point where I think it changed the trajectory that I took, because I literally just walked out of there and I told the dean, getting my resignation. I gave everything that I had. I could have had a PhD by now, but it took me forever to focus on myself. I managed to do my master's while I was there. And I thought the next step was my PhD, but I was just so hurtful about the fact that you give so much and just that disloyalty, which again, in hindsight, you can't please everybody. And that was why I decided to quit teaching, and never look back. So for me, that definitely changed the course of where I ended up. I don't think being in private practice, and I think Carla probably knew me back then, wasn't something that I really aspired to do. It was I just found, I always knew that being in a private practice was just a lot of hard work. It's so easy to have a set salary at the end of the month that you collect. It's hard being in private practice. It's not easy. And I think the perception also, people looking out from the outside in think that we make lots and lots of money and it's just so easy and life's all peachy, but it's not. I think it's the hardest decision to set up a private practice and to be an independent practitioner. So yes, everyone, that was not a very nice part of my career, but definitely a turning point for me, or something that stands out.
So we will end off on the positive notes then. What has been the changing point or a memory that you can remember over the last 30 years that has been the most positive experience for you, or something that has inspired you or motivated you to carry on going? Can you remember one special thing that made you feel, oh, now I know why I'm doing this? That's why.
Definitely, I think what influenced or kept me going, weirdly, I think the worst experience came from teaching, but I think also the most positive experiences came from teaching. And I think for me is when I do meet up with my students. I mean, it's 11 years worth of students running around. And I think when I get feedback from people from my ex-students about how they appreciate what I did and the effort that I put in, for me, that's something that motivates me to continue, because I felt like, okay, I have something to offer. Definitely the feedback that I get from patients. When I returned to South Africa, as I said, I was unemployed. And it was so weird because for an interview, can you believe it, to Oticon. And Bazani was CEO at the time. And it was so weird because when I walked in, she introduced me. I'd known her, so she introduced me to, so Gerard was there before, Gerard Stroop, and he'd left by the time I got back to South Africa. And she was like, she introduced me to some of the staff members, and she's like, I want you guys to meet Farhana. She's a living legend. And I'm like, okay, I think that's a bit much. She's like, no, we've had your students work for us, and they were just amazing, and they were the best graduates that we could ever get. And when in your time, unfortunately, your students were headhunted because they were trained so well. And for me, that was so heartwarming because I was like, oh, okay, even though I left, over something that was so unfortunate and just, yeah, it was heartbreaking. But I was like, so that for me was one experience. And then Cara, last week, I got a phone call from ENT requesting an audiogram for a patient of mine who's now in her early 30s. And so the mom was like, so the ENT was like, you go to Farhana? She's like, yes, I would never go to anybody else. And can you believe I diagnosed her daughter when she was 2 with, she was profoundly deaf, diagnosed her, fitted her with the first set of hearing aids, super front PCL 4 pluses, off she went to Fulton. And she still comes back to me every couple of years. We still update her hearing aids. And yeah, she's doing so well for herself. She's never developed oral language. But her mom was like, told the ENT, Farhana has been with me from the time my daughter's been 2, and we will not be with anybody else. So that's probably one of my longest lasting patients. I was in government then. And I mean, she just followed me to practice. So wherever I went, they came. Yeah, and I think that's probably one of my first babies that I tested. She's now an adult. She's nonverbal, but gainfully employed, does well at the company that she's at, communicates with WhatsApp, by emails. They're learning how to sign. So I think those are the things that I think that, I think keep going. Definitely stand out.
That's great, Farhana. Just a thanks from my side for the work you're also doing in APPF. And, even as you mentioned, you're at the tail end of your career. I would echo Cara's words that maybe you can go a little bit longer and you can you can be part of APPF for a long time still. How do you see being part of this organization, APPF? How do you see the changing audiology landscape and the entrance of other competitors and over-the-counter hearing aids? Where do you see the future of independence, especially as part of APPF?
So firstly, I'm very grateful for APPF, and I knew Francis only by us bumping into each other at conferences. So over the years, I got to know her very well, and for some reason, the two of us just connected. So, when I was part of the initial discussions, like you were saying, when this whole concept was being put together, because I saw the need, I was also felt that there had to be an organization that spoke for the independent audiologists. It's a very scary time, I have to admit. There's a part of me that's also tries to look at it a little bit philosophically. I firmly believe that whatever is meant to come to you will come to you. So I think if you still continue doing good work, I don't think the kind of retail outlets, etc., are definitely a lot more profit-driven, will be very much patient-centered. I mean, patients will often comment on, like, that was an hour and a half. That's what my fitting sessions are, an hour and a half. When I do an initial order and the patient needs a hearing aid, it takes an hour and a half to explain the results, to talk about hearing aids, what's available, etc. So I think that kind of quality care, you're not going to get from that. We're definitely going to get patients that want that quick fix, just want a hearing aid, couldn't care about all the blabbering that you do about all the stuff that they can do. They only get something cheap. And I think, sadly, I think this is where they're going to go. I think I'm trying to be philosophical about this and feel that there's via word of mouth. And that means I'm doing something good for people to refer me to their friends and their family, etc. I think there's definitely a place for it. Also, I know that the universities are churning out more graduates than we can deal with, and they the reality on the ground is that there isn't enough work for everybody. So I think sadly, maybe this opens up an opportunity for newly qualified people to get their foot in the door, to get employment as such. If I had to take away, if I had to look at it from that angle, there are these graduates that don't have work. So there's an opportunity for them. But I think at some point they're going to evolve and want to open up their own and be independent like we are. So we can't fight it, it's here to stay. And I think APPF is definitely has established itself in a very short time as a voice, a strong voice and a force to be reckoned with. And I think thanks to the very strong leadership that we had in Francis and now with Cara, I really don't carry my weight in APPF, I have to admit. I can do more, and I don't think it's something that we need to fear. I really don't. I think if you value what you're doing and if you have a good skill set and if you're offering best practice and if you know that it's all about patient-centered care, we're offering something very different, Sevan. So that's going to be here. It's going to stay. We just have to do something that sets us apart from these retail outlets.
Well, thank you, Farhana. I think it's so nice for our members to get to know you, and not just as the person on management, but also the human behind the name. And we don't always get to see the human, so that's great. And also it's going to go onto our YouTube channel, so hopefully those people that you resonate with in Pietermaritzburg and the surrounds will want to come and see you as well. So your details will be on the YouTube channel, and as if you're watching and you're a member of the public, if you go to www.independentaudiologists.co.za, you can find Farhana there, find all her areas of interest and also her contact details, and make contact with her directly. And we hope that everyone in Pietermaritzburg and the surrounds make their way to Farhana, because she is a very experienced audiologist who is very passionate about helping people. So thank you, Farhana, so much for your time today, first of all. And second of all, thank you for all the hard work that you put into audiology and speech therapy, as well as the industry, all the input, even if you don't feel like you're pulling your weight, or if you don't feel like you are doing as much as you could do for APPF. We are very, very grateful for your history, for your knowledge, for your experience, and also your professionalism and high regard for ethics. And that, I think, is something that cannot be bought. It is only, it's inherent in a person. It's part of your personality, and that's what shines through whenever I get to chat to you. Or I'm always feeling like I'm leaving there having met someone that is so ethical and so above ground, and just wants the best for other human beings. So thank you so much for everything that you've done for audiology.